Tonight, you are going to put your child to bed in a room of their own. A crib with soft sheets, a baby monitor glowing on the nightstand, the door closed, the house quiet. You will not think twice about it, but for most of human history, a baby sleeping alone in a room would have been dead by morning. No crib, no monitor, no doctor to call. Just the dark, the cold, and everything out there that could smell a newborn from a quarter-mile away. For thousands of years, every single one of your ancestors faced the same problem. Human babies are the most helpless creatures on the planet, and keeping one alive was the hardest thing our kind ever had to do. How they did it changes everything we think we know about parenting, about family, and about what your body was actually made for. Let's start with the problem, because the problem is you. A newborn horse stands up and walks within hours of birth. A newborn chimpanzee grips its mother's fur and holds on from the first minute. A newborn human cannot even hold up its own head. It cannot walk for a year. It cannot feed itself for years. It cannot survive a single night without someone else keeping it alive. Of all the primates on Earth, human babies are born the most unfinished, and the reason is the brain. The human brain is so large that if it reached full size before birth, it would never fit through the birth canal. So a trade was made. Human babies are born with brains roughly 25% of their adult size. A chimpanzee is born at about 40%. That means 75% of brain development happens after birth, while the child is completely defenseless. This is not a flaw, this is the cost. We were given the most powerful brain on the planet. The price was the most helpless infant on the planet. And for thousands of years, every mother who gave birth faced this equation. A baby that could not cling, a baby that could not run, a baby that could not even stay quiet when a predator was close. In a world full of wild animals, that baby was not just a blessing, it was a target. So how did they keep it alive? The answer is something modern humans have almost completely forgotten. They did not do it alone. But here is the part that almost nobody talks about. The way ancient humans raised children did not just keep them alive, it shaped the way children learn to think. Today, we assume that intelligence develops inside a single child's head. You send them to school, they sit at a desk, they absorb information alone and are tested on it alone. Learning in our world is a solo performance. For our ancestors, this model would have made no sense at all. In 2005, developmental psychologist Barbara Rogoff at the University of California, Santa Cruz, published extensive research on what she called learning through intent participation. She studied indigenous communities in Guatemala, Mexico, and across the Americas, and found that children in these groups did not learn through instruction. They learned by being embedded in adult activity from birth. A 2-year-old sitting on a grandmother's lap while she wove fabric was not being entertained. That child was absorbing the rhythm, the pattern, the sequence of a complex skill through the body of another person. A 4-year-old watching a hunt being planned around a fire was not eavesdropping. That child was being included in distributed thinking, absorbing how adults reason, argue, negotiate, and decide, not through lessons but through presence. This is fundamentally different from how modern children learn. Modern children are separated from adult work entirely. They are placed in rooms with other children their age and taught by a single adult who is not their parent. The knowledge comes through explanation. For thousands of years, knowledge came through proximity. You learned because you were there. You were there because you were never anywhere else. The group was the classroom, and the classroom never closed. And this had a consequence that researchers are only now beginning to measure. In 2011, a cross-cultural study published in the journal Developmental Psychology found that children raised in tight-knit communal settings showed significantly earlier development of what psychologists call theory of mind, the ability to understand that other people have thoughts, intentions, and feelings different from your own. Children raised in communal environments could pass theory of mind tests a full year earlier than children raised in isolated nuclear family settings. They were not smarter, they were more socially calibrated. They had spent every waking moment surrounded by different people, different reactions, different emotional textures. Their brains had more data. They understood people faster because they had been swimming in people since the day they were born. Now think about that in reverse. A child raised in a modern apartment with 1 or 2 caregivers, screens for stimulation, and limited contact with adults outside the immediate family is developing the same social brain with a fraction of the input. The hardware is the same. The data feed is radically narrower. Meanwhile, the physical survival of the child depended on something just as communal: carrying. A baby on the ground was a dead baby. When early humans began walking upright, they lost the body hair that primate infants used to cling to their mothers. A chimpanzee baby grips its mother's fur from the moment it is born and hangs on. A human baby has nothing to hold, so mothers carried them every hour, every day for years. They fashioned slings out of animal hides and plant fibers. A burial site thousands thousands of years old in Italy revealed an infant buried with what archaeologists believe was a decorated baby carrier. But the carrying was not just transportation, it was survival technology. When a human infant is picked up and held against a body, its heart rate drops, its breathing stabilizes, it stops crying. Scientists call this the transport response. It is an ancient biological program wired directly into the nervous system. In the wild, a crying baby attracts predators. A baby that goes silent the moment it is carried is a baby that stays alive. Your infant still does this right now. When you pick up a screaming newborn and hold it to your chest and it suddenly calms, that is not just comfort. That is a predator evasion reflex that has been running inside human children for as long as we have existed. The baby senses it is being carried to safety, so it goes quiet so it does not get you both killed. But carrying alone was not enough. You also had to feed them, and what our ancestors fed their babies would make most modern parents uncomfortable. Mothers breastfed for a minimum of 2 to 3 years. In many traditional groups, 4 years or longer. This was not a lifestyle choice. This was the only option. There was no formula. There were no bottles. There was no clean water safe enough for an infant to drink. Breast milk was the only sterile, nutritionally complete food a baby could receive. And it carried antibodies that fought infections in a world with no medicine. And when the baby started needing more than milk, there was no baby food, no mashed fruit in a jar, no soft cereal from a box. What there was pre-mastication. The mother or the grandmother or whoever was holding the baby chewed a piece of meat or a tough root until it was soft and partly broken down by their saliva. Then they pushed it from their own mouth directly into the baby's mouth, lip to lip, saliva carrying digestive enzymes and immune cells straight into the child. Some anthropologists now believe this is the origin of human kissing. Not romance, not affection. A mother feeding her child the only way she could. And then there were the grandmothers. This is the part of the story that nobody expects. Most animals die shortly after they stop being able to reproduce. There is no obvious reason to keep a body running once it can no longer bring new life into the world. But human women live for decades after they can no longer bear children. Why? In 1997, anthropologist Kristen Hawkes at the University of Utah published a study on the Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the last groups on Earth still living a traditional foraging life. She found that older women past childbearing age were among the hardest working and most productive foragers in the entire group. They spent hours in the heat digging tough tubers from hard ground. They collected foods that young children could never get on their own, and they fed their grandchildren. This meant that mothers could have another baby sooner because grandmother was already feeding the last one. Hawkes called this the grandmother hypothesis. The reason human women outlived their fertility is because grandmothers who helped raise grandchildren ensured more of their family survived. Your long lifespan exists because thousands of years ago, an old woman digging roots in the sun was the difference between a child living and a child starving. That stage of a woman's life is not a decline, it is a strategy. One of the most successful strategies our kind ever developed. And here is the part that should unsettle every modern parent watching this. For thousands of years, no human raised a child alone. Never. It was always a group, always a network of hands, always someone to pass the baby to when you could not hold your eyes open anymore. The average mother in a traditional community had somewhere between 5 and 15 people actively helping her raise each child every single day. Today, in most industrialized countries, that number is 2, often 1. You are sitting in an apartment at 3 a.m. with a screaming infant and nobody is coming. No grandmother down the path, no aunt in the next shelter, no neighbor who will hold your baby while you sleep for an hour. The exhaustion and loneliness that modern parents feel is not weakness. It is not a failure of character. It is the result of trying to do alone what your body was never once in all of human history designed to do alone. For the entire span of our existence, the question was never whether one person could raise a child. The answer to that was always no. The question was whether enough people cared about that child to keep it alive. And for thousands of years, enough people always did, because that is the only reason any of us are here.